Hi there, Malcolm here with my 138th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you a catch-up for the last few months, seeing that the last video was the March TBR, and we're now near the end of May. And so I'm going to try and do a nice general discussion, keep it casual, and I'll try and keep the edits out, so just try and go with the flow. There'll be lots of mistakes and silly things I'll leave in, possibly. I'll also take out the endlessly staring into space trying to think of something intelligent to say. But basically what happened was COVID, and we got struck down with that for about 10 days. Wasn't too bad, but then that set off my labyrinthitis, which I suffered for the subsequent 5 weeks. Finally got over that, and because by that time there was a big backlog of videos to do. I was working, tired, didn't have the effort or the gumption to do it, and now it's another month later still, and it's like, I've got to do something. So that being said, let's get cracking. So in the month of March I managed to finish 10 titles, numbering 2,024 pages. Not great, but like I said, life was hard. So what did I read? First up was the series Solution by Bob Shaw. I had started that in February but ran out of time, so I think I quickly finished this off in the first few days of March. This March, gosh, it is March. So this one, really good. I'm very much enjoyed rereading the Bob Shaw I have done. Another great science fiction story by the great science fiction author. I said it's booktastic, and as a brief summary, this one deals with why human beings live not very long on planet Earth. Next up was my book of the month, Reprieve, by James Hahn Matson. While I was demonstrating games in Waterstones, I saw the lovely stack of green books with this lovely blood effect down the cover here, down the edging here, and thought, I'll give it a go. Now, it's got a map in the inside cover. Not really into horror, but I thought, I'll give it a go, looks interesting. I bought it for a friend as well. So I sat down and read this and really quite hated it, unfortunately. I said it's boring, just plain dull. And effectively it follows a bunch of people for no particular reason, because they're sort of loosely attached to a murder that took place, and we have a jumping between court cases about this murder and what these people were doing up to the event itself. But most of them weren't actually involved in the murder itself. And yeah, I just didn't really care about virtually everybody in this. Kendra was the only likeable character, and she had nothing to do with the murder whatsoever. And I'm not quite sure why her story was in there. But it was an interesting story. But really bored for most of it. Didn't see the point of it. And the ending was just a damp squib. I mean, it was already established that someone was going to die at the beginning. You soon learn who it was. You soon learn who did it. And the reasoning behind it was just rubbish. So, pretty book, but very disappointed with that one. I then finished my point horror stint with Funhouse by Diane Ho. This one was actually quite readable, with a serial killer trying to take out a bunch of people for reasons that are just completely daft, to be honest. The twist was ridiculous, and I said it's worth reading. Like I say, the story itself was very readable, but I didn't like the twist. I thought it was completely outrageously daft, and anyway, it was alright. I also read The Crab with the Golden Claws, one of the Tintin books, and this one was the first time I read it. I've read a lot of Tintin many times growing up. This was completely new to me, and it's quite a significant one because it is the one that introduces the character of Captain Haddock, Tintin's accident-prone friend, and he doesn't turn up until the 8th adventure. I'd seen the Adventures of Tintin film, and so certain elements were familiar because they pulled them out and put that into the film. But again, Tintin does an innocuous thing like go for a walk, stumbles across a tin can, and then is involved in a great plot. full of slapstick and unlikely escapes, but very entertaining. I said this was worth buying. And then on to The Shooting Star, another Tintin book. This is one of my personal favourites, where a meteorite lands in the sea and there's an expedition to go and find it before anybody else does because it's got some unusual properties to it. And the front cover shows a rapidly growing mushroom. One of the gentler stories plot-wise, still plenty of falling over and unlikely escapes. But I really like it, and so, booktastic. I then worked my way through this huge book, Daughter of the Empire, by Raymond E. Feist and Janny Wurtz. I've already read the original Riftwart trilogy, and so this is the first book of the next trilogy. And this story follows Mara, whose brother and father were killed in battle, and finds herself leading the house. And of course, she's doomed to fail, and so it's a case of her against the world, despite all the odds. Now, I really enjoyed the Riftwar trilogy, and so I was surprised by how much more I enjoyed this one. I think the addition of Janny Wurtz's input really helped flesh out the female characters in the story. They weren't terrible in the original trilogy, but they were pretty two-dimensional. You know, they were the mother, the princess, or the waif left behind going, oh, woe is me, my man's gone off to fight. No, we had a really strong female character, and the supporting female characters were also very well fleshed out. So a huge improvement over the original trilogy. Really enjoyed this one. One could say it was a bit formulaic and predictable, but it's quite an odd story, and sometimes you need that sort of one-upmanship to happen. Really, really enjoyed it. Booktastic. Looking forward to the next two books in the series. Next up was Tintin and the Secret of the Unicorn. Yep. Where we get introduced to the place where Captain Haddock is best known to live, Marlinspike, except he doesn't live there yet, and his butler Nestor. Again, a lot of elements have been taken from this book and put into the Adventures of Tintin movie, along with Crab the Golden Claws. I think the plot is more this one, although they have changed the bad guy. And so I was already kind of familiar with the story, but I hadn't read this one before, so it was quite interesting to see this one, and just to see just how Captain Haddock got his house and his butler and all of that. So, good stuff. Really enjoyed it. Booktastic. That has a direct sequel, Red Rackham's Treasure, which was kind of alluded to at the end of the movie. So I don't know if that's going to happen in the upcoming one, or we're going to have a different adventure. But they go off to find the treasure that they knew existed, having got the house. And this one introduces the character of Professor Calculus, brilliant inventor, but hard of hearing and always never really knows what people are saying and gets the wrong end of the stick all the time. So a good little adventure, this one. I think it's the first story that doesn't really have an antagonist. They're just them trying to find the treasure and solving puzzles and clues and things like that. Good stuff. But not quite as intriguing as Secret of the Unicorn, but worth buying. And just before we hit COVID, we picked up Asterix and the Actress, and so I read it. In this one, Asterix and Obelix have their shared birthday, and their mums turn up. And of course, these great heroes are brought quite low by their mums, who are fussing and nagging at them. And an imposter enters the village to try and undermine everything as well. Another attempt of the Romans to destroy the village. And of course, it doesn't work. But the tale was really quite enjoyable. We got to meet the parents, because the dads turned up as well. And so it was a nice sort of family reunion, and you got to learn a bit more about Asterix and Obelix. And for a first read, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the better ones of the new set. So, booktastic. And the final book I finished in the month of March was The Edge Chronicles, The Winter Nights, book 2 of the Twig sequence, written by Paul Stewart, illustrated by Chris Riddle. And I was reading this to my youngest son. Now he's really enjoying them. I've come a bit sort of jaded about them, to be honest. They're kind of interesting stories to a degree, but they don't go anywhere for ages. And then finally, toward the end, there's some sort of plot that rises up and something happens, and then finally we got the resolution of that. But it's generally, a bunch of stuff that happens in this crazy world, and it's a day in the life of, almost. Worth reading to a child, I suppose, but yeah, I've kind of gone off them a bit. So that was March. Not a bad month, really. Enjoyed virtually everything I read. Reprieve was a big disappointment, but generally not bad. So, on to April. So we had 17 titles in this one, counting 3,110 pages. So I don't know what happened to me there, but I got reading quite well. Starting with Magnificat by Julian May. This is the final book of the Galactic Milieu series, the one that sees the resolution of Fury and Hydra and the Great Rebellion. So a fantastic ending to a great family saga story where people have psychic powers of various magnitudes and abilities. And this nicely wraps up everything that was set up in the previous 3-4 books. I can't tell you much about it because of spoilers, but I think my biggest issue with it really is that the rebellion itself, the thing that's taken most of 4 books to get to, is such a brief thing that happens towards the end of the book. It's all that build up and it happens and then it's over and that was it. Yeah, not many pages are attributed to the actual rebellion itself. But apart from that, booktastic. Love that series. I've read it twice now all the way through and we'll look forward to doing it again at some point. The 7 Crystal Balls. This is one of the first books I read. Absolutely love it. Expedition comes back from the Incas and they'll get struck down by some mysterious illness and Calculus gets kidnapped. And so they have to investigate just what happened to him. Booktastic. And so they do that in The Prisoners of the Sun, where they travel to Peru to track down just where Calculus ended up and try and rescue him. More good stuff. Really liked it. I've read it so many times, I know almost panel by panel. So automatically booktastic for that reason, really. But a really good 2-part story. My book of the month was Skyward Inn by Alia Whiteley. My wife randomly gave it to me one day, having picked up in the bookshop, saying, yeah, saw this, cover's really beautiful, why don't you try it? And it is, it's a very pretty cover. Once you read the story, it actually makes sense as well. Did I like the story? Not really. It started off okay, I didn't really know what was going on. I thought, okay, we could do a bit more world building here. No, we're not going to, okay. And I didn't really find it boring particularly. It didn't go anywhere, and then when it did, it was like a case of, I've seen this in another book and it did it a lot better than this. It basically is, it's the same thing that happened in another book that I've read, but the remade series by Alex Scarrow, if you're curious, it's the same basic plot of that, to be honest. And there's a twist at the end that just left me with why. It's pretty though, so I would say boring, just plain dull. And then I read Wings by Terry Pratchett. This is the final book of the Bromeliad trilogy, where we see, and it lies sort of in sequence with the previous book, Diggers. So with Diggers we follow one bunch of gnomes. In Wings we see what the other bunch of gnomes got up to at the same time as they travel to America to try and get hold of a rocket. Yeah, really enjoyed it. It's Terry Pratchett, so it was already going to be good. And yeah, booktastic. A good little series, that one. I haven't actually seen the TV show, so I might try and catch that at some point. Right, the next one's dropped on the floor. Next up was Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. This is part of the Discworld series and arguably the first chronologically. It's a lot of hundreds of years before the events of the rest of the series, really. And it sees the birth of the Church of Om. And it follows a simpleton known as Novice Brother, who encounters a tortoise in his vegetable patch, and the tortoise happens to be the manifestation of the great god Om, who intended to turn up as a rampaging bull or something, but with only one true believer, being Brother, the belief system as it is on the Discworld meant he could only manifest a tortoise, as which he's been stuck for 3 years. So a really good, scathing look at organised religion versus faith. A really clever story. Really enjoyed it. Booktastic. Next up was Quantum Leap Independence by John Peel, while here Sam leaps into an ancestor of his during the build-up of the American War of Independence. It's a very clever story. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the series really so far. There was a big twist at the end about the wife of the ancestor which when revealed meant absolutely nothing to me, but then I don't know the TV show that well, and so the impact was kind of lost on me. I did guess it was someone significant, but I didn't even know she existed, let alone that she was that. I'll keep it quite vague for spoiler reasons. But apart from that, yeah, good stuff. I said it's worth reading. My final sprint to finish the X-Files books I was reading, so I started off with Dark Matter by Ethan Royce, also known as Neil Shusterman. The novelisation of one of my favourite episodes, Soft Light, where a man's shadow is able to reduce a person to their component parts. And I really enjoyed how it was expanded upon from what I saw on the show, people's thoughts, feelings, and various other connections as well that weren't made clear on the show, and a really good companion to the episode. Excellent stuff. Buy it. Howlers by Everett Owens. This is the novelisation of Unruhi, the episode where the killer is able to project his thoughts onto photographs. He doesn't know he can do it, but that's how they can catch him. And hence the snazzy photo on the front there. Yeah, really enjoyed that episode as well. And this was a pretty straight up screen to text version of it, so I gave it a worth reading for this one because it didn't really expand upon anything particularly. But yeah, I like the episode, so I was going to like this. And the same with Quarantine by Les Martin. This is one with a plague outbreak at a prison that was arranged by some pharmaceutical company, and of course a couple of convicts escape with the disease and they've got to be tracked down while Scully tries to work out what's going on at the prison. The episode was okay, and the book matches it really, so there we go. There's a 3-part Tintin story starting with the Land of Black Gold, where somebody's been putting something into the fuel which makes it explode, and the nefarious Dr. Mueller from the Black Island returns, and it also introduces the character of Abdullah, the mischievous prankster son of the Emir. Oh, and the Thompson twins eat something that they really shouldn't. Another story I've read over and over again, Booktastic. And for my favourite duology, Destination Moon, where they go to Calculus's secret installation where he is building a rocket to the moon, and there's some espionage going on, some intrigue going on, and other things. Yeah, this was written about 10 years before the actual moon landings, and so was a quite interesting take on what was going to happen. Booktastic. And it finishes off with Explorers on the Moon. Destination Moon was one of the few books that ends in a cliffhanger. This one follows directly on from that as they get to the moon and explore. Espionage reaches as far as the moon apparently, and the thing that the Thompson twins consumed while in the desert in the Land of Black Gold strikes while they're on the moon as well. So lots of fun stuff, lots of silly things, and a nice sort of space adventure really. Booktastic. Now, another X-Files book was Regeneration. This is the last one I've got in the collection, so more X-Filed out now. This one's by Everett Owens, and like his other one that he wrote, it's literally a straight screen to text transcript almost. It was alright. The episode was kind of interesting. It's about the one who consumes tumours because he is a tumour pretty much, and it has amazing regenerative properties, but has to kill to keep his life a secret. Worth reading. Then it was The Calculus Affair, a book I'd not read before, where Calculus invents something and is abruptly kidnapped by another power to have it for themselves, and of course Tintin and Haddock have to go and rescue him. I really enjoyed The Sticking Plaster. That was a very funny sequence of events. And for first read, again, this really surprised me. Booktastic. I also finished reading Leviathan Falls to My Wife. This is book 9 of the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. Absolutely fantastic series and a really satisfying conclusion to it. I obviously can't tell you much about it for spoiler reasons, but a really strong 9-book space saga about how mankind reached the stars. Can't recommend this enough. Go see the show as well, that's really good too. And we've now moved on to the short story collection that feature the stories between the books, Memories Legion. And then finally, The Red Sea Sharks. This, I think, was the first Tintin book I ever read. I was never a huge fan of this one, and even at a reread, I'll only say it's worth reading. I think by the time we've got to this point in the series, it's getting a bit weighed down by the weight of its predecessors. There are an awful lot of return characters in here, from Rastapopoulos, Abdullah, General Alcazar, Dom Oliveira, Alan, the Thompson twins, Haddock, Calculus. And there's almost no room for the plot, to be honest. It was alright, it still works as a story, but possibly one of the weakest of the series. And there we go. I think I went through those quicker than I expected, so hopefully I'll get that edited and out before I have to do my wrap-up of May, which I've only got a few days for. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know down below any comments, questions, or other things you want to say about the books I've shown you. Keep them spoiler free if you can. And hopefully I'll get back to posting more regularly. So if you have nothing nice to say, so signing off with, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. See you later.